You might find some guys that say, if only capitalists did what they were supposed to do and just make money instead of trying to get power.
Right, and isn't that kind of what I hear Ben Shapiro say? Two things he's said that
Yeah.
I've liked, and we should talk about Ben Shapiro for a little, actually, because
Sure.
it seems to me that for many kind of conservative Catholics, he's become the primary preacher.
Mm-hmm.
And he might be a good social commentator and have some very good and helpful things to say, but I think if you're listening to him for 2 hours a day, more than you're listening to the saints, you're going to start to... Your view of how to be a Catholic's going to change, I wonder. But two things he said about capitalism. One is, capitalism is give me what I want or starve. And I like it. Like, there's something about that I like. It's like I can see how a society would work. Like, produce something that's worth my time, worth my labor, or worth my money, or you don't get anything.
Yeah.
That I like that. You can tell me why I shouldn't in a minute.
Yeah.
But then the other thing he'll often say is capitalism should never be devoid of virtue. Like, we need to have a virtuous populace in order for capitalism to work.
Yeah. Well, I think that's right. But, let's start with the first one. How about?
Yeah.
Gosh, that sounds harsh.
It does sound harsh, and certainly I'm sure he and those who would follow him and subscribe to what he's saying give a ton to charity. I have no doubt,
Mm. Well, I
don't think he's saying don't help the poor when he says that.
Yeah, sure. I don't want to presume on any of that, but within the matrix of the gospel, you find something else completely, suggested, where Christ says, give and do not expect to receive. I mean, that is a huge message that gets taken up throughout the patristics. St. Augustine has some beautiful homilies on this. St. Basil has some really fiery homilies on this. And they have the same appeal. They say, when you give to somebody, do not think about a return in this life. Think about that as storing up your goods in heaven. The vault is safe. The bank manager is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It is safe. Don't worry about that. And I think that's a good appeal for those who have excess cash. They think I should just invest it. I need to make my money work to make more money. And it's like, well, actually, I don't really think that's what Christ is telling us to do. I think he says that money is a placeholder, so always know what it's holding a place for. And if you have excess cash, well, that's then for your brother. You get to use that to bless him. I think that there's Ben might push back and says, yeah, I'm not talking about charity, all this stuff. I'm just talking about business interactions. And again, I would say that that's probably not the way that we should be making friends with the mammon of iniquity, that our understanding with giving somebody has to come with this fervor. St. Thomas talks about this. He says, if you've received a gift for somebody, the really virtuous man will want to give more back.
Yeah.
There's not an exactitude. There's not a, you gave me that, so I demand this back. There is a real freedom in giving and receiving. And so again, does that work as a remedial action of give me, and then I'll give you within our fallen state? Maybe kind of. Does it lead us beyond that? No, it doesn't. And that's the problem.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. And this kind of gets us full circle, because I would imagine what somebody who would be sort of a proponent of that way of thinking would say is, okay, sure, he's not talking about within friendship and family.
Yeah.
As you say, right?
Yeah.
So, but we're getting back to this point that it's like we can live within a totally liberal society, and we can have one set of rules and virtues for society and how it should function, and then we can live differently. And it sounds like what you're saying is it doesn't work.
No.
It won't work eventually.
It doesn't make sense to have a privately held faith and then an irreligious culture. It just doesn't work. Yeah, it's just a strange, incoherent juxtaposition, I think. So, but within that capitalist model, there needs to be mercy. There cannot be just an I that everything else revolves around. That is pride. That is the source of pride. And that's what we need to be aware of, because that's a deadly sin, let alone greed, which is another deadly sin. And the first things on our mind has to be our eternal salvation, our eternal reward with Jesus Christ, getting to see his face most
Amen.
Clearly.
Yeah.
So I think that within the model, there's greater hope, and the tradition has given us something else. Remind me of the second thing he said, though. What was?
Give me what I want to. Oh yeah, the idea that capitalism, well, America and the way it was founded requires virtuous people and won't work without that, or something to that effect.
Yeah, well, I think that's right, but that's definitely not what the founders of capitalism suggested. So, Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations talks about the baker and the butcher not doing things because they have a friendship with another person, but rather because they have a friendship just with themselves, which is a contradictory term, right? A self-interested action. And that's why they butcher their meat and give it away, because they have a self-interested action that gets something else back. John Maynard Keynes, he, and some people, I'm thinking that most people listening to this who actually have a real bent on economics are probably more on the Austrian side than the Keynesian side, but he says something that for another 100 years, he's talking about needing to help the society prosper monetarily. We'll need to treat fair as foul and foul as fair, actually completely inverting the system of virtue. And that's also something you find in the Austrian school as well, where it is fear-based action, that we are doing good things for the sake of self.
Yeah. Who's that Sheila who wrote that work on capitalism and talks about the virtue of selfishness?
Oh, I don't know. Tell me about that.
Ayn Rand?
Oh, Ayn Rand. Yeah. Oh, Sheila. Sorry. I was thinking that was her name. Yeah. Absolutely.
It wasn't that. Explain that to me.
Well, within this, there is a strong conception. Gosh, well, there's a lot to say about this, but that if I just do what's good for myself, in terms of making a profit and not. Well, hello.
Sorry, that was you. Keep going.
and not just in trying to become more powerful, in terms of making money, then that money will circulate around the globe faster. Money will work. That means it'll go in more people's hands. That means that they're spending it on things that they like. And you find that there's just this strange phenomenon that people are convinced by this, as if you could have evil people in a good system, and that will produce a good society. I just think that's insane. How are you going to get a good society without good people?
Thank you for watching this clip. You can click here to watch the full episode. And I want to say a big thanks to our sponsors and to our amazing patrons for making all of this possible. Please do us a favor before you go. Click that subscribe button and then the bell. And that way YouTube will be forced to let you know every time we put out a new episode.